Hello again and welcome back to Decision Makers. This, of course, is the podcast which is taking you inside the boardroom where all of the big decisions in football are made. Delighted to say, and by the way, I'm Hugh Wilson-Croft, that I'm back alongside Curtis Davis, former Premier League defender, of course, and Managing Director of Unique Sports Group, Marlon Fleischmann. And delighted to say, to help us with our latest episode, which is all about football agents, the middleman making football's wheels turn, that the former Wolves goalkeeper Matt Murray is with us as well. Matt, how are you? Welcome to Decision Makers.
I'm really good, thank you. Hope you guys are cool as well, and thank you for having me on.
We are very good, and I'm going to be picking Matt's brains and Marlon's brains, particularly over the next 45 or so minutes, because of course you are agent with USG with a wealth of experience as well. So many people, I know you know from your playing days what an agent's meant to do. I've got no real idea. You know, this is what we as football fans think of the people there, just basically negotiating contracts for footballers, getting them as much money as possible. That's really all I ever thought it was. Since meeting you, I know it's a whole lot more, but I do want you to just tell everyone, and I'll start with you, Marlon. How do you define your job as a football agent?
Well, that's a wide question, isn't it, to start with? I think there's two ways to look at it, right? There's the formal definition, I suppose, if you want to call it that, which is that we provide professional representation services, wraparound care for a client to really maximise their career opportunities on and off the pitch as effectively as we can do. The informal way of looking at it is that we have to deliver. Okay, we have to deliver for our clients, be it that move, that contract, whatever we promise, we have to deliver on. And if you're an agent that doesn't deliver, you won't keep your clients very long.
Matt, is that how you see it?
Yeah, massively. And I think how you described it there initially, Hugh, is why sometimes people hear agent and go, "Oh, do you know what I mean? We don't like agents." And I was a young player coming through, and sometimes my parents had that thought. But the right agents and good agents really, really add value. And one of the biggest things when I came into USG, Marlon said, "Right, tell me all your strengths." So I told him my strengths. He says, "Right, that's cool. Now I want to know your weaknesses. You need to go and fill them, and you work as a team, and you got to add value. You have to add value." And I sometimes describe it a bit like being a parent. I've got 4 children. I love my children all the same, but I'm a different parent, and them all have the same values, but they need me in different ways. And I think that's a big thing as an agent, that people go, "Oh, well, how do you do it as an agent?" Well, every player needs you differently and at different times. So yeah, the role of an agent has certainly evolved so much since I was a player. And then when you come into a company like this, you really, really see how they add the value. And people think it's easy. "Oh, that move just happens, this, that." No, there's a lot of knowledge, expertise, and ultimately you have to deliver what that particular client wants. And I think that's massive.
Curtis, you had a number of moves. We know that Matt was a Wolves man throughout his career. Just for you personally, how important were agents throughout your career?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because you never know if you're going to get that move without the agent. But I've spoken before about when I was at Luton, and I got the move to West Brom. I was actually represented by the PFA. So whilst the PFA will do the contract, they didn't represent you in terms of put the feelers out and see if anyone's interested in you. So therefore, I got the move without an agent. But then I needed them PFA to help me with the deal. And I spoke about it before, saying whilst the PFA are there for the player and for me, they also are understanding of the club situation. So maybe there was a slight conflict, whereas if I had an independent agent away from dealing with the PFA, it might have been a different situation. But as I got the moves as I went on, I think my move to Villa was still officially with the PFA. And then after that, I signed with my agent, who was the agent at the PFA. But I couldn't say I wouldn't have got the moves without them. But what I would say is the side of it when your agent is now away from the PFA compared to being in the PFA, more people are willing to pick up the phone and make a phone call to them and maybe a little less scared of what might happen.
Might have got more money, is what you're saying.
I don't know about that, but yeah, I think it's just listen. My introduction to agents, I not had a bad experience, but in terms of I had agents reaching out to me. I was a young player, just got into the team at Luton Town at 18, turned 19, and all of a sudden all these agents come out of nowhere when they've not even spoken to me before. Then what they were doing is, instead of actually coming and having a sit down chat with me and actually say what they want to do, I was getting client lists through. And, you know, I don't want a client list of all these people that represent. I want to know what you can do for me. And I think that's something that moving forward, when I do that, it's always about, as Matt said, the personal touch to each person. It's, you know, I was a player, I was quite low maintenance. If there's not a move going on, I'm happy to have a coffee once a month or once every couple of months. I'll only call you if I need something. Whereas I know certain players that literally the light bulb's gone out and they'll call their agent to get someone round to do it. And that honestly, like, that sounds silly, but there are some players that literally can't do anything for themselves. Now, I'm not saying agents are all going to deal with that. They'll soon make the player get on their own 2 feet. But there are different layers, as Marlon said as well, to the way that you deal with players and different ways of doing the job.
It's an interesting one. I will come back to your playing experience as well. Matt, obviously you were a player. You were a player too. I don't know if you had the same experience when it comes to agents during the course of your career, but I guess it must have been quite positive for you to decide to want to go down this career path. What took you in that direction?
I think a bit of both. I stayed under contract throughout my whole career, and even though I had injuries, I felt that, you know, the financial side, you know, I did pretty well out of it. Like Curtis, I was pretty low maintenance in the way that I could make a lot of, you know, handle a lot of things myself. And I think, you know, the way I was parented is different to how I parent my children. So it's the same with players. The game really, really has evolved. You have to keep evolving. But I still think there were a lot of horror stories, if you like. And you're thinking, no, I want to come into this game and really, I coached after playing, and I love adding value, and I love sitting down with families and thinking, right, of course I want to make money, I want to do well, but when you know you've maximized things, you put a strategy together. When players are bigger, the move sort of, or you got a top player, or, you know, like Curtis was saying, he was performing and doing his stuff. So then the move sort of came about. But there's a lot of stuff you do that isn't seen. Younger players especially, for their families, it's all new. And that player only gets one career. And for that parent, they want to make sure that the people that they decide to help their child. And by the way, as a parent, the most important person in the world to you is your child. So if you start with the values of, I won't do anything for your child that I wouldn't do for my own child. So I'm going to give you all the information. But your son's, you know, we work in the male game, your son's best interest is at heart all the time. And then you go in that way. And I think as long as you do those things and be honest, transparent, all these different things, then that's what you do it for. So for me, it's really, really rewarding when someone's decided that you're the one who's going to work with their child. You're the one that's going to go on that journey. You're going to put that strategy together. And either it's a debut, a goal, a first clean sheet, I don't know, penalty save, those contracts that you've added value to, it's really rewarding. And that's the bit where people don't see. Too many times we think, oh, agents take this money out of the game. No, if you ask families, they really, really value what we do and what good agents do. So that's why I came into it, because of some of the positive bits I've had, but also bits that I felt I could add and I could do. And just wanted to make it a level playing field and really, really support those families that needed it.
Matt, when you speak about looking after their child, obviously it's not just in terms of an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old. It's about getting the family involved, be it if they're 25, and making sure that, you know, that guidance that they've got from their parents or whoever else, that they're all involved. So how have you found that situation of trying to help the client by having their family involved, but not trying to make them seem like they can't do it themselves and they're not an adult?
Yeah, I think, again, it's getting that balance. And now I'm in my 40s now. You probably think I'm a bit older, but I'm in my 40s. And I still like to bounce things off my parents, because that's just how I am. Now you've got some players who want to go and do things all on their own. Everyone's got their own sort of way, if you like, of their own dynamics and how they handle things. So I think it's listening, looking at things. I think often as the players get older, they do like to do things a bit more, give them the tools. But yeah, of course you work with family for the player. But I feel as well, like I say, I'm a dad myself, and there's times where I might deliver the same message. My kids don't always want to hear that. They just want me to be dad. And there's times when we allow the family to be family, take some of the emotion out of it, and we come in and we put a whole support around it, a whole support network. So whatever's needed is there, so that player, because again, it's not just something we've done by fluke. Yes, we've been young players ourselves, which has built a big contact list. We've had the goods, the bads of our careers, the ups and downs, because it's certainly not always plain sailing. We've got our idea of the game, but ultimately we're not their coach. Teams ask them what they ask, but they can bounce things off us. But then we've got that degree of experience and those expertise, and that's what you want. So I think when you put all that together and offer it all, then you can come with good decisions. But it's certainly not easy. And some parents want to give you, tell you exactly, and that managing that dynamics is difficult. But again, that's something that we put around the players. But I find it really, really rewarding. But getting that balance and that dynamic usually takes a bit of time, and you earn that word called trust, which isn't always easy to do.
Things have changed over the years. It's so good to hear you kind of describe the role and the influence that you want to play in players' lives. And I'm not saying that those agents that we used to see behind big desks at the, in the mid 90s and stuff like that, people driving Bentleys, and they were the big stories being told to us about agents, what is it now, 30 years ago. It's so interesting to see you take such a holistic view of it, and a real personal touch to your responsibilities. Over the years, Marlon, has that been in many ways the big change around how agents work?
Yeah, I think so. I think what you said before is the industry is only 30 years old. It's a junior industry. It's still in its infancy even now. And I think what happened at the beginning was you had a football agent. Now you have management agencies, and they're two very different animals. And I think you have to detract the management agency from what someone visualizes as a football agent. And I think that's the clear differentiation for me. Over time, what we've tried to do is provide a full wraparound care around a player, but with a bit of intelligence of what that talent needs throughout his career at different times of his career to go and maximize the potential he's got. And I think, we took a lot of learnings from the American models of talent management, not just in sports, but in entertainment fields, as to what they provided for their talent. And the role of the agent is a lot more sophisticated in America, and probably as a reputation is a lot more heroed, the role of an agent in America, and accepted than it was over here, because the first viewpoint people in the UK had of an agent was someone stepping out of a Bentley with a cigar, and that's not realistic. That's almost like a movie script of what an agent would be like. That's not the reality of the day-to-day market. And the industry has evolved, and Matt used the word before, evolved. If we as agents had stayed in that almost caricature position, we wouldn't push the industry on. We wouldn't evolve with technology and data and different ways of supporting and helping the client. We just end up as just football agents. Whereas now, especially from our side, we've evolved it over time with experience into a full service management agency, in the same way that a talent working with us will get the same support that a musician or an actor would working with their agency. There's no huge difference in terms of the services being on offer.
What is that then? The full scope of
how long have we got?
A management agency like USG, yeah, because I think some people will still feel like it is that person, that caricature getting out of a Bentley. The full management service that you provide, what does it entail?
I think there's you split it in the middle, right? On pitch, off pitch. Let's start there. Your on pitch is everything you can imagine, from career guidance, contract negotiation, transfers, loans, everything that you see played out in the media. Off pitch is where, when we talk about added value, like Matt said before, that's where we really come into it. Because a lot of the work we do with our clients is away from the pitch. Data analysis, video analysis, well-being, performance coaching. Then you've got PR, you've got sponsorship, commercial, social media. You've got so many other different areas. And then you want them to be good humans. So you plug in community work, charity work on top of it to round the individual as a good human. So you put all that together, there's probably 15 to 18 different service points or touch points you wrap around a player that maybe when they come into the agency as an academy player, they don't see a lot of the off pitch. But as their career grows, they tap into each one at the right time.
Matt, what does your day-to-day then look like within a company like USG? What are they asking of you?
Yeah, again, like Mon said, you want to add value. You want to take distractions away from your player. So, and that might be sometimes when a move's going on, you're on the phone a lot, talking people, your player through it, the family through it. Because if they haven't experienced it, you got to remember that we might do, Marlon's probably done over 1,000. I don't even know how many deals he's done. But for every player, so sometimes it's the first time it's happened for them. If a player's coming out of contract in the summer, even though we know that they're going to be okay, it's a daunting time. So we can relate to that. So there's lots and lots of conversations. So the days are sometimes it might just be ordering boots, going through clips, looking at things, checking on stuff. Other times it's, listening for half an hour. Sometimes you have players who just want to let it all out and talk to you. It's no day is ever the same. So it's really, really exciting. Like any job, there's bits you love. There's other bits that are harder. But yeah, it's just basically trying to give the player as much support. So football, no doubt about it, is a high pressure business. It is. All the scrutiny, everyone that's there, everyone knows how to do it better than you. If you're a goalkeeper, a manager, a striker, everybody will talk about it. Again, the game's evolved. When I was a young player coming through, it wasn't on Instagram, it wasn't on all these social medias, all everywhere. There's games, there's talking, everyone's talking about it. So when you have a high pressure situation, if you do not have the right support around you, then it becomes high stress, very, very high stress. If you have the right support around you and people adding value and your team is there and the parents are in that team and everything there that Marlon's named, then that's when you're going to get the best chance for high performance. So yeah, it's being accessible, it's talking, it's so many different facets of this job. So it's an amazing, amazing job. Bits say I love going to the games or watching young players or talking through things, doing the contracts. But sometimes it is as much as that. My stud's broken. I'm going to meet up with my national team tomorrow. Can you get on it? Can you sort it? And again, there's that whole support network because that's the tool of the trade. So yeah, honestly, Hugh, every day is never ever the same. It's exciting and you never know what you're going to wake up to and what it's going to bring.
Matt, I've been in the car with you and we've been in the car for 2 hours driving from Birmingham to Watford to the offices or something like that. And you're never off your phone. You're never off your phone. You're always talking to players. You're catching up with players' parents and always doing your work. You're never switching off. Is it fair to say that, obviously, especially with transfer windows now compared to 30 odd years ago, that the transactional part of your job is actually minimal? Because of the windows, you're going to be working towards it, but in terms of the actual transactional part is going to be maybe 10, 20%. Whereas actually the emotional side and the catching up and maybe even the coaching detail that you might give certain players, that takes the heavy load. And how do you feel that you benefit from it being that way round other than just being do a deal with your personality?
That's a great question because work-life balance is tough. But if you want to be at this high end, then you have to produce. And the rewards are great. And rewards in the way of, yes, you're delivering for the family, but also you can, for the families and for the player, but also you can do very well for your own family if you like. But there is hard work. That's it. You have to work hard. So you're saying there on the phone all the time. Those calls, as you say, being there for the players, being there for the families, but also these moves don't happen by chance. So it's about gathering the information, gathering the information, and just that one call with a club. Sometimes it's a player because you pick up information off them about, so-and-so's moving or they're going to move or the manager's told them this and that. Of course, you want to support them, but also it's about gathering information about who's going to... It's like gap analysis and jigsaws and putting it all in, putting it in a database. So yeah, windows are stressful in the way of, or high pressure because you've got to react to things and get things going and speak to your players. But yeah, people think, outside windows, is it quiet? As you said there, Curtis, when you travel with me, it's like when players travel with you, they go, wow, I didn't realize the level of stuff you did to make these moves happen. And which is cool. But I think that's in any industry. You've been a fantastic player, Curtis. You've had a great career. You're doing lots of amazing punditry stuff. But the stuff you do before you go on air is the bit no one sees but allows you to be a good pundit. The stuff you were doing as a player when no one saw is allows you to, they see you on a Saturday performing, but they don't know what you've done. So there's lots of times when people see us now, it's not with the cigar or whatever else, but it's holding that shirt, being with the player, doing the signing. But it's all that stuff that's gone in the background, the ups, the downs, the tough chats, the meeting up, the standing in the rain, getting home late, all those calls that deliver those moments, if you like. And yeah, so it's relentless, but I love it. I think if you're involved in football and that is your career, then you're very, very lucky.
It's a long process, though, from standing pitch side all the way to a boardroom with a player, from seeing them in youth football to the Premier League. A big, big job. What would success throughout that process look like if you want to separate it from a daily basis, a quarterly basis, an annual basis? You know, that process, where does success lie for you, Marlon?
Success for the individual client or for us as a business?
Let's go for you as a business to begin with.
I think for us as a business, it's maintaining the levels of the service we provide, making sure, like I said before, we deliver on the promises. And we will go into, if we're talking about the window specifically, we'll go into each window and we'll plan for that window well in advance. So we will know the players that are likely to move, the renegotiations that need to get done, and who's out of contract, you know, and we judge success by, at the end of that window, we go back to the original planning and see what we've done. And only when we can look and go, yeah, do you know what? We can't move everyone because there's not always a move out there. But when you look at your pressure points, and especially the guys that are out of contract, when you know you've done everything possible for them because their families depend on that, you judge that as your success. Happy clients at the end of the window is success.
I'll ask you this, Curtis. I'm sure the guys will have a view on it. You know, ultimately it boils down to some players finding a new environment ahead of that window. Would it be you as a player telling your agent that it's time for a change? Is it the club coming to you as a player and saying you might need to find somewhere new? Is it your agent getting in touch with you and saying, listen, I've been watching the games, or I'm seeing that you're not playing regularly, like we might need to do something here? Who makes the first move, if you like?
I think in my situation, I've always been quite realistic on what's in front of me. So, for instance, if it's a situation where I'm not playing and I can see there's 3 or 4 players ahead of me, particularly being a centre-half, not going to get a chance, I need to move on. Either on loan to maybe show that I'm alive again and then move, or move now. Whereas there's other times when, like I say, you're aware that you're doing well and you maybe are thinking of taking that next step as an individual, and then at the same time your agent might be getting certain phone calls about you. So it's kind of, for me, it's happened more organically where I feel, right, I'm doing well. Not to say I want to leave right now, but, you know, dip your toe, and sometimes the phone calls have already happened but your agent hasn't told you because he's just wanting you to continue your work. But sometimes it will just be an out of the blue one where an agent will just get a phone call about a certain club looking for a player, and not that you were ever thinking of leaving, but it might be a decent opportunity, and then something can get the wheels in motion. But obviously it's just different players are totally different breeds. You get certain players that are impatient. The moment they're not playing, they're ringing their agent telling them they want to move. So I think that's where Marlon and Matt will be able to be a bit more of a solid head and say, all right, calm down. It's been 2 games you've been out of the team. So I think I was more balanced, but I know that some players, if they've not played for, be it 5-10 games, they want to leave straight away. Interesting
point just raised, Marlon, quickly to deal with. Curtis just described his agent possibly not giving him the full information. Does that happen often?
No, I think if there's a transfer ongoing, you want to give your client concrete knowledge or advice. You don't want to distract your client with half-truths or maybes or might happen. You know, as a prerequisite for me and the clients we have, if I was to speak to any club, bare minimum response would be, oh yeah, I like him. That for me is bare minimum. They should like our clients. Just because a club likes your client doesn't mean you run to your client straight away and go, oh, they like you. because that's a million miles away. That's a million miles away from them liking you to them signing you. Is so far to get to that if you're inexperienced and you jump the gun and you say to your client there as a distraction, guess what? They really like you. Some players can take on that information and not affect their games. Some players that will live in their heads, which will create pressure. And then suddenly in the game, they're playing unnaturally because they think that someone's watching them in the audience or in the crowd. So you don't hide things from your clients, but you know at the right time when it's concrete to tell them and when not to tell them.
I think you've helped us cover most of the basics of the job there, and I hope you've got a good picture of what it might take on a day-to-day basis, what agents are looking to try and do with their clients. But there are still plenty of myths out there when it comes to a football agent. I think we've got a decent group here that can try and dispel some of those myths for you. They're great guys, really, honestly. Matt, what are some of the common misconceptions when it comes to football agents?
Well, I think you have to manage expectations of your client. And some clients seem to think, or not clients, but people in the world think, oh, well, you're a powerful agency. You can sort of magic up a move. How can you go and just say to a club or to a manager, you've worked really, really hard to get into the position you are as a manager or the club where they are in the league, but you're going to take my client as a favor to me? That doesn't happen. You can't magic up moves and get favors done. And if I was a player, I wouldn't want a favor done for me either. If you want to sign me, you want to sign me. So, of course, we've got power and knowledge and everything else and know how to maximize things, but magicking up moves is a big one. I think also that agents get 10% of every transfer fee. I don't know where that comes from. That is not like set in stone and those sort of things. So I think there's so many myths out there, but there are a couple of the big ones straight off the top of my head that sometimes spring up.
The transfer fee one is the biggest one that I get. You want your client to move because you get a percentage of the transfer fee. We can't. You can't do it in the UK. It's actually against the regulations. So when people hear that, they go, oh, I didn't know that. I just assumed that you take 10% of the transfer fee every time a player moves. So therefore, it's in your interest, or this myth of conflict that's in your interest for the player to move. The fact is, you don't earn off the transfer fee.
I see.
It's the agent will take a small commission on what they have negotiated it. So it's in their interest to negotiate the absolute maximum for their client. So it's a win-win for both.
Just to clarify, we're taking people inside the boardroom then. How does it work in terms of getting paid? Just a little stat. Premier League clubs paid £409 million to intermediaries from the 1st of February 2023 to 1 year later, exactly. So that's the two transfer windows for last season. Agents paid £409 million from Premier League clubs. How do they work that out?
So that would be based on the percentage of the salary that the agent has negotiated for that client. That is what the agent will invoice for. So if you take as a rough guesstimate 5%, that stat is 5% of what all the players in the Premier League earn combined. So that 400 whatever million pound, if you do how much the players earn per annum totally in the Premier League, it'd be more than that.
Okay, wow, okay. Curtis, as a semi-neutral in this, I know some football fans say, why are clubs paying agents at all? Surely the clients we're talking about here are players. The agents are obviously employed by them, so surely they should pay the agents. So as a semi-neutral, like I say, what are your thoughts on that? Should players pay their agents?
It's a difficult one, really, because, ultimately, if a club really wants you and they're reaching out to really get a deal done, I think ultimately you feel like, all right, yesterday I was paying you this, but might as well just pay the fee as well. You that's how you feel about things. But ultimately, sometimes it doesn't go in your favour, and that just depends on how much you want to get the deal done. But I just think the thing with it is, as a player, you really don't want to think about that. You want it to be that they've wanted you. As long as the terms on the actual contract are good, then that's kind of the bit that matters. But again, if you're talking about 5%, and be it you're going to have to pay out 5% or 10% or whatever it is, it becomes a really difficult thing then, because it's like, yes, I am earning X, but actually X take away that 10% is less than what we're talking about. So sometimes it's negotiating your wage, knowing whether or not you're gonna pay the fee. But I think most players are aware of their situation before they get to that last moment, and it's never kind of just sprung up on them that they have to make a decision at the final moment.
End of the day, it's our career, it's our job, it's our livelihood. If you're adding value, I always believe if you've added value and you've done, and you're transparent, and that's a bit again. So you talk about other myths as well. If you're very, very clear about what you're earning, what the tax liabilities are to your client, but also you're saying about clubs, and we add value to the clubs as well. Okay, so we've talked about that when your players ring you on the way home, or if your players had a certain issue, or like I said, if their light bulb's gone out. But you know what I mean, there's lots of things for these young athletes and their families that they need that support. And often when things are going wrong, I mean, more often when things are going wrong, the clubs ring you as well. So good agents add value, because every single person wants that player to perform to the max. So the player does, his family do, the fans do, the club do, the agent does. So if we're all there adding and we're all in that team, then good agents add value, and the clubs have no issue whatsoever if they've gone and done it and worked hard and been on that. And often you've been on that journey all the way through. So you have to be transparent, what you're going to earn, what tax is paid, all these different things. But as well, again, this is with my player head on. When I was a young man and I had to pay that myself, that's when it can get very messy. So it's paid on the player's behalf. So it's a benefit in kind to the player, but it just keeps it a lot cleaner and doesn't, avoids any difficult situations as well.
I think it goes back to what's at the beginning, right? As the agent, you have to deliver. And if you're the player and your agent has delivered for you, and you're the club and the agent has delivered the player that you wanted, providing they've sat there and they've done their job, both parties should be happy paying the 5% because you've done your job. It's no difference if an estate agent sells my house for me. I have no issue paying them because they've done what they delivered. The issue becomes is if you haven't been an active participant in those negotiations, you haven't maximised it, you haven't got the job done, you didn't help the club, you didn't help the player. That's when, as an agent, you can look and go, actually, what value did I bring? But on the golden rule of being an agent is you have to be able to show your value, deliver your value, because like I said previously, football is the only industry where you never get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate, and that, that's the mantra we live by. You have to go in and affect a transfer, either make it happen, make sure the club get that player, or make sure the player gets that contract that is right for them.
I think we've strongly there dispelled some of the myths by, I think, detailing exactly what goes into being a good agent now. And I think you guys have really underlined it.
But I think, just adding on before we move on from that, I think the media's perception of agents, okay, is very distorted. And it skews the picture a little bit, because you only see agents in the media next to obscene numbers, okay, high numbers. And I'm not here to say that 400 million for agents is a good thing, a bad thing. If they provided a service and provided the value, it is what it is. But for the vast majority of agents in this country, they're not in the headlines. They are working in the Championship, in League One, in League Two, doing a great job for those players whose livelihoods depend on that agent finding them employment, because that's not headline making. How many players do we see in the Championship and the Football League getting released year on year? How many academy players do we see getting released year on year? The agent who sits there makes 30, 35, 40 phone calls to find that player employment. That's an agent. But we don't see that. We talk about myths. No one sits there and sees that side of an agent who's actually going, right, I need to get this player a contract, because if I don't, he can't pay his mortgage next month. That doesn't make the headline. Oh, agent makes 45 phone calls, 3 trials later sets his player out of a contract. That's not headlines. So I think agents do, and they are the bit of the pantomime villain they'll be in the media when there's a scapegoat or a high number, because that's the headline, right? But the good guys that get on with it, they do it behind the scenes, but no one really sees it because it's not that interesting.
And with that, Hugh, as well, it'd be interesting to ask Marlon, but you're seeing that 400 and something million, and people say, oh, all that money is going out of the game. It's not going out of the game at all, because I don't even, it would blow my mind what it costs for everything that's reinvested back into the players that we work with, boots, transport for families to games, to help them, all these things that are there, nutrition, so much stuff that we don't charge the player for. With the commission that comes in, we reinvest it, because we know that if we invest in our clients, ultimately they'll get better and better. So it's not 400 million going out the game and we've all got villas here, there and everywhere and all these Bentleys and, you know, everything else that the people seem to have of agents. Loads and loads go back to making our players better and growing and helping to grow the talent coming through. So we've got that constant cycle of really, really good, talented young players.
Like Matt said, so we employ football coaches and performance coaches to help players on days off to go and work on things. That costs. But it's us that reinvest that funds into the agency to be able to provide those services. And the other thing that skews that 400 million pound is that, you know, that will be made up of some really big foreign transfers. Okay, that money doesn't come into us in the UK. That will go to the foreign agents, and what they do with it is them. But we can only look at it as a UK market, and I'm fiercely protective of the UK agents and how we operate in our own industry. And like I said, for the vast majority of the guys, it isn't that 90 million pound move to Man City. They're rarities, you know?
My mind is kind of blown by the intricacies of it. Even hearing Matt describe some of the services there that players get, that you kind of think, surely the club's going to provide that, you know, helping them with their nutrition, you know, getting families around to games and stuff like that, you know. To see that the agent takes all of these roles, you know, actually, you know, is a big understanding.
But they've got 30 odd players in a squad. The clubs can't do it on a bespoke scale that we should as representatives. You know, if I don't want a player worrying before a game as to how their parents are going to get to the game. I don't want them worrying about ticket allocations or, you know, a lot of it is down to trust. If they're not performing, they'll tell us, look, my sleep patterns, is it my diet? It's bespoke to them. And when you've got a club environment where there's 30 players all together, the clubs can't be that granular with every single player.
Listen, we've been almost too nice about the agents so far, to be perfectly honest, because you've given me so many, you know, good news stories around agents, and some players have had a difficult experience. I'm not going to say nightmares or anything like that, but there are some tricks of the trade that agents have used, maybe to get new clients. Are there some dark arts still?
Dark arts? No, I call it leverage. I think there's leverage in negotiations. I think dark arts are, that goes into the pantomime villain mythology book, I think.
I think leverage is still just about there as well. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, leverage makes me think that you're leaning on people to get deals done. What do you mean?
Leverage for me is understanding all the areas surrounding that player that will work to get that player a transfer or a move or a contract or the value or salary that he deserves. That's what I mean by leverage. I don't think, Matt alluded to before, you don't go to a manager and go, oh, come on, do me a favour. Like, you can't. You have to, you're on your own 2 feet to negotiate hard. But the only way you get a result is understanding leverage.
When you're talking about dark arts, though, I feel that you've got leaders that, you know, sort of create a culture, if you like. So I work very, very closely with Marlon, and you say you tell the truth. You don't overpromise and underdeliver. I think some agents, you know, and this is how we've ended up picking up players, have tried to say things are there that aren't there, winging it, if you like, getting the player to sign a rep and then scrambling. And then they look poor and they lose the player because that club wasn't there, that club wasn't there. Also, there's things about signing of reps as well. Again, we follow our rules. We do it the right way. We would never slip a rep deal in, stuff like that. Tax. the tax will be paid. If we take a fee on the player's behalf, there's going to be tax. So again, we're transparent. So these are, if that's what you're on about, that you're hearing about bad things that are done, unfortunately, there are a few people that have damaged the reputation, but it's the stuff that we wouldn't do, we don't do, and ultimately you lose the player and you lose money in the long run and everything else and your reputation. So if you do the right thing and said it right at the start, if someone did that to my child, I'd be fuming. So I'm not going to do it to anyone else. And I'd rather tell them the truth, that there's either you need to do a bit more to get that move, or this is where we're at. We talk about managing expectations. Of course, they ring you up and tell you, oh, this agent said this, agent said that, to try and turn their head, or you heard this in the dressing room, this person earns this amount. No, we know what we're doing. We're very, very strong with our contract knowledge. And say, if we know it's there to move, we'll find it and we will maximize it. But we can't, we don't lie about what we can get just to get a player.
You mentioned the term rep deal a few times there. Can you explain what a rep deal is?
So the longest a player can enter into a contract with an agent, so we're licensed agents, we've taken our exam, is 2 years. So you can't sign for any longer than 2 years. If you have a player who's under the age of 18, it's a minor rep. So again, it's very governed and it's regulated. So again, people talk about the agency world being the wild, wild west. Not at all. We've taken exams that we've had to revise for. We're governed by strict rules. So, and then there's contracts which are legal contracts that you enter into and things you have to do. So yeah, but again, you do hear stories where parents have gone, no, my son sat down, yeah, that's his signature, but that's not my signature. And it's been lodged. And that's horrendous. And again, if they're going to do that over a rep contract, what are they going to do when there's big sums of money or deals to be done? So yeah, so basically under 18, a guardian and the player signs it. Over 18, the player can sign on their own. Could be it could be as short as a week rep deal, but the maximum they can sign is 2 years with any particular agent.
This is for both you, Matt, and you, Marlon, but with the regulations coming back in now, and when you talk about the wild, wild west, it was intermediaries. So you didn't have to be licensed, you just had to be registered. So with the agent's license now coming back in, how many stories have you heard about people having to re-sign, because I've heard a few myself, within their agencies to a different agent and almost being hoodwinked by having to just sign over their rights to another person just because that person doesn't have their license?
I think let me just start on the regulations first. I think when FIFA in their infinite wisdom decided to get rid of the regulations, it was one of the worst things they could have done to an industry, to basically unregulate an industry, because there was no barrier to entry. Okay, you could just sign up, pay us some money, and suddenly you were allowed to represent a person in their career. Now, for me, that was reckless. The exam and the regulation surrounding representation of players should be high. It should be at a bar where it's a challenge to get a license. It shouldn't be a free-for-all, because any industry is going to attract the wrong sort. It's down to us and the lawmakers to make sure there are strict barriers of entry to the industry so that the players are protected. So bringing it back, I was all for it. I was all for the regulations. There should be no issue with transparency, with contracts, with the amount of regulation you need to understand to be an agent. And I think part of bringing that back does protect our reputation, that actually there is something behind it and not just anyone can do it.
Yeah, again, because if you've got, if you've got nothing to hide and you want to be transparent, you're earning this is how you're working, then no problem at all, because it's, and there is a skill set to it as well. You shouldn't just be able to register online and then try and claim that you can help with someone's son and add value, or someone's daughter, and add value, and suddenly think that you got all this contract knowledge. This is someone's career that they've worked really, really hard to do. I know how much sacrifice my parents made to get me to training and this and that with no guarantees. And then somebody who's got no, can just go online, who's got no skill set and wing it. And then once you're signed into that person for 2 years, it's very, very difficult. And that 2 years could have a massive bearing on the rest of their career. So there's a real skill a duty of care that needs to be done. Answering Curtis's question as well. Again, if that's the case, that you can have some really, really good agents who maybe would struggle with the exam, if that makes sense, but they are good at what they do. But the rules are the rules, and you have other people who maybe could pass an exam but wouldn't be as skillful as agents, you know? So I think that if you've had somebody who you really like as your agent, but for whatever reason, even though they've got all this experience, they've been doing it for a long time, they couldn't pass the exam, and they say, look, somebody else in your company, you're going to have to move across to them, but they can't then act in a certain way because of regulations. But if that's the case, as long as there's transparency, I don't know, if that was my son, I wouldn't have an issue with it, but I'm fortunate enough that I haven't had to have that conversation with any of my players because I passed it, you know, I was able to pass the exam, worked really hard at it and passed it. But I don't know how much that's affected things. Marlon would answer better. But for me, with my stable, it's been fine. But if that had been the case, then I'd have had to have transparent, honest conversations.
Yeah.
So, but the rules are the rules.
It's been a long journey, quite clearly, in terms of your time in football agency, and just the way that you're describing, you know, what you've been through. It's very, very informative, but it is very detailed as well. And I just wondered, Marlon, really what you'd learned during your time working with USG. You know, you've built something quite astounding in terms of the clients that you have as well. And I'm sure there must have been a lot of different experiences within that. You know, when it comes to taking on new clients at a company like yours, you know, there must have been some big names you missed out on. There must have been some incredible moments of signing some fantastic players as well. Does anything stand out in terms of, you know, the work that you put in to maybe bring someone in, or maybe the work that you put in and ended up missing out on a big deal, for example?
I think going back to what you said earlier, I mean, I've been doing this for over 15 years, and things you've learned and things you regret along the way, you're always learning. Am I a better agent now than I was on day one? Of course. But I think over time, the biggest lessons that you take, or I've taken, has been never to count your chickens, because I said before in the interview about jumping the gun. That's the worst thing you can do as an agent. You are there to control the expectations, the narrative that goes to your client. And if you get overexcited or think a deal's done, you need to be very, very aware of why that deal may not happen. And you know, you've got a player, a family in your care, I suppose, for the sense of the word, waiting on you to say, yeah, that deal's done, or that contract's done. Remember we spoke to Calvin Bassey on episode 1, and he said, it's the excitement, it's the buzz of getting a deal done. As the agent, you're the one that they go to for the information. That they want clear advice from you. If you're the one in the room high-fiving them and jumping around with them, and then suddenly that deal doesn't happen, they're looking at you going, what was that about? You have to be the one, this is the biggest lesson I've learned, you have to be the one controlling it, controlling the expectations, not getting too carried away, and only when the deal is done and finished and signed, then you can do your high fives. And too many people that come into this industry get caught up in the excitement and the emotion of representing a player, doing a transfer, getting involved between two clubs. Yeah, at the beginning of your career, it is exciting. At this stage in my career, it's very functional of, I know what could go wrong, I know what needs to be done, I know how to control the narrative to make sure that transfer happens, and only once it's happened, then do you go high five.
Is that a case of from the start of your career where maybe, like I say, not necessarily externally, but internally you start thinking, oh, what a move, oh, it's brilliant, oh, blah, blah. Whereas actually, as you say, now it's more troubleshooting, worst case scenario, where you're actually going the other way and kind of thinking of the way it won't work out, and if it doesn't work out, where are you going to take him?
Yes.
Rather than kind of being like, oh, it's a done deal. I know they want to, like, let's just get it done.
Because I've sat there now, and I'll give you an example. We've, you know, there was one transfer where we'd done the medical, we were, the press conference, the announcement was the morning. We were in the training ground that morning, family flew over from France, all the family in the room, in the canteen, press were in the other room, the shirts are all printed, the scarves are being laid out on the table, And then suddenly the sporting director pulls me in the room and goes, it's off. It's off. Something's come back on the medical results. It's off. We can't do it. I had to go back into that room with a family, a player whose dreams I'm about to shatter. If I'd been in that room 5 minutes earlier, 10 minutes earlier, wait, this is brilliant, come on, this deal's done. They look at you as, what are you doing? You have to go in there and go, look, that conversation is one of the hardest conversations you're ever going to have. You have to break hearts. But you have to do it because that's the role of the agent, to show them what's happened, be respectful, be honest. The club didn't go into the room. I had to go and do it. But you go into it, in the back of my mind, in the hour that happened, they were in the room. I had our office staff looking at transport, flights, every single bit of logistics, because I know their heads have now gone. Mm. At the same time, plan B. And for me, it was plan B, plan B, plan B. A week later, he signed for another club. That is, but would I have that mentality on year one of my career or year two of my career? No, you only get that methodology of almost automated thinking of, right, I need to do this, 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 and this after years of doing it. And that's why I said before, there's a difference between football agents and management agencies. As a team, with all different staff and everyone around you, you can sort yourself out of those situations rather than panicking because you're a one-man band.
I think the failed medicals is one of the hardest things. It really, really is. And I think if you speak to lots of people, if you speak to a striker, who could score 200 goals, they probably remember the few they missed, And so there's things where, as an agent, you've worked so hard and you've got, it's emotional. You're part of that family, part of that team, and you've seen all that excitement, like Marlon says. But of course, it impacts you as well financially, because you've done all that work, what you've done as well, and then all that work's undone, but you forget about yourself, and it's about them and being around them, and first and foremost, being there for them, and that human side, and then about plan B. But that initial bit is the hardest, and you see tears. This is people's dreams, and they're also then, their mind's running away. They're projecting of everything. If I fail this medical, I'm going to fail every medical. Well, okay, and let's look at it, because it's not always the case that you do that. And so Marlon's been, he's there, he's been calm, he's gone into, solution mode, and they're all looking at him. Everyone's looking at him, so with that team behind him. But internally, yourself as that agent, it's really tough. And I've had players, break down on the car park. They've held it all in there, and then they come out, and you feel like you're giving them a hug, you're giving a dad a hug, because you know the journey they've been on. But at the same time, some of the most rewarding times are when you sit down and you know what a family's been on, and then you read the numbers out of the contract they're gonna sign, and they pass a medical, and there's tears, because they're like, what? My son is getting that. My son is gonna either move there, or my son's getting this, and it is life-changing, and that is so rewarding. So yeah, you go through a lot of emotions in this job for sure.
I wanted to end on a positive. I know we haven't got long left. You spoke about the difficult conversation previously, Marlon, when it doesn't go right. I just wondered, after all your years, what your most satisfying deal was, or your champagne popping moment where you just thought that was all worth it. It may have been a tough road, but either great for the company, great for the player, whatever you drew the satisfaction from.
I think it would be unfair to just do one player, because actually every deal matters for that individual. I think I take pride in seeing the development of players. I know that sounds a little bit wishy-washy or something.
Give us a player.
No, honestly, I can't, because actually, generally, it doesn't matter. If we take the transfer and just gone as an example, we've done Premier League moves, we've done League One moves. The League One move was great. I really enjoyed doing that. And I was delighted for that player to move to get his big chance, because I think that will lead to another deal 2 years on and 2 years on and 2 years on from there. So it's hard to say, okay, that one. I think we discussed on episode 1, Calvin Bassey, his deal to Ajax, for me was a standout in my career, just because of the complexities around that deal, and watching a young man eyes when you say, no, you're going to move to Ajax. And he can't believe that, because they are a European giant. I know they're not at the level they were in history, but to see his eyes and his family's and the emotion of his family was brilliant. But really, hand on heart, every completed deal, whether it's a contract negotiation, a transfer, I take pride in. I think watching the academy players come through as professionals and those first team moments, they're the best. They're the best by far for me. That's what I love watching. A player who maybe you've met at 17 and you've put a strategy in place and you've maybe done a couple of loan moves, and then you get into the first team and then they score that goal and it's lift off. To see that change in families, it's actually real. That's brilliant. And you know, it's not, you can't be I said it before, you can't be an armchair agent. You have to get emotionally involved in and emotionally attached to your client career progress. And I think watching a young man step into a debut or even a first England call up, they're magical moments. And beyond the deals and beyond the money, those are the memories you'll always treasure.
Yeah, I think just from outside looking in, I think the side of it would be the progression side, because you can have a player that moves from Premier League to Premier League side, gets an extra 50% on his wages, which is obviously excellent for the player, excellent for the agency, stuff like that. But I imagine the one that you sought out to get, that was a lower league player, and you picked him up when he was playing for the under-21s and he wasn't fancied, and all of a sudden you've made him into this Championship, then Premier League player. I imagine that would be the thing. And, you know, going into this industry, that's kind of an area that, you know, I'd like to have in terms of that growth and that kind of mentorship that helps a player go from, like I did, from a League One to a Premier League. And I think those would be the ones that are satisfying. Not, as Marlon said, you can't be more satisfied with one player getting a move than the other. But when you've had to do the hard yards in terms of start from Z and get to A, rather than kind of starting at C and getting to A, I think it's a lot better.
Final word from our guest, Matt Murray. Because obviously you've come in at the end of your career. We're going to talk about actually career transition in one of our other episodes. But actually someone wanting specifically to do what you do now, what words of advice do you have to all of those people listening who think one day I want to be a football agent as well?
Realize that you need rhino skin to turn up. Again, that was a big thing that Marlon said, turn up, go, watch the game, try and make contacts. Be prepared that you might get a no, but do things in the right way. Look at your contact list. How are you always improving your contact list? What's your niche? So for me, I looked at it and I thought, right, I can come in as an ex-goalkeeper. That'll be a way I can specialize. It might be with younger players. It might be an ex-player who could work with forwards. Say someone who's come from a coaching background, a scouting background. There's so many different ways. And it's a great opportunity, but understand that you're going to get a lot of no's. You are, but you're going to learn and you got to keep going. And I think go and align yourself with people that you look at and go, right, they're successful. Now, I'm not Marlon. I can't be Marlon on the pitch, but I can look at it, take things, get the strengths from him, be around him, ask questions, be there. But turning up is huge. And there's some young, up and coming agents that I'm working with now. And that's the biggest thing. They've gone to games, they've put themselves out there in those games when they just didn't expect anything. They've just seen a game on locally or something like that, or travelled a little bit, gone and stood there, and they've suddenly just opened up a door. And that's what will happen. But it is hard work. It doesn't come to you. You have to go and get it. And but it is so rewarding. It really, really is.
Really, really appreciate you, Matt, joining us on this episode of Decision Makers and sharing your experience. Of course, Marlon, Curtis as well, always a pleasure. And it was pretty mind-blowing for me just to understand, like I say, the small details and intricacies and actually the motivations for what you guys do. I hope you all enjoyed it as well, and we managed to demystify some of what being a football agent is all about. Remember, by the way, you can listen to us as a podcast with your podcast app of choice. So make sure you give us a follow there. You won't miss any of the episodes. Leave us a rating as well. We'd really appreciate that. All the social media clips from all of our episodes will be found at our social media handles, which you'll find in the description. And we'll be back very, very soon on another episode of Decision Makers. Hopefully, we will see you then. Take care.